It is so good to be here. I'm a big fan of navigating motherhood, so thank you for having me. Well, this past summer, we received some news that changed our lives. And to be quite honest with you, it was news that we weren't expecting to receive either. And maybe some of you have received news like this before, or maybe you will in the future, and I see all of your eyes going down my stomach. No, we're not expecting, but we got notice that we had to be out of our house in 60 days. We got that dreaded 60-day notice, and we got it in the thick of what is probably one of the most heightened and competitive real estate markets. And we got it in the middle of summer when we were just about to go out of town for vacation with our family. My son would be starting school the next month, and I've got the 3 little kids. So needless to say, it wasn't the ideal news to receive. But God had a plan, and as he always is, he was faithful. And actually 2 weeks ago today, we just moved into our new home, and we're so very thankful. And that journey of finding a place was something in itself, but I think probably the most dreaded part about moving has got to be the packing, right? I mean, it's like, it just takes a toll. But when we first got word that we had to move, we had some time. And so there wasn't really all that sense of urgency to get packing, because especially when you don't know where you're going to go yet, you're like, where am I going to even put the stuff? So we were just really casual about packing. You know, I purged quite a bit, and I made a handful of trips to Goodwill, but we didn't get all too serious about the packing process. That is until the day that we were moving drew closer and closer, and we're like, okay, well, I mean, even if we don't have a place to go, we're going to have to be out of this one. So we got more serious about the packing, and I don't know if it's just me or if you can relate, but it felt like every single closet that I opened, every drawer that I opened, every couch that I lifted up just became like a Mary Poppins bag. It just like, it never ended. It's like, I haven't seen this in 4 years, or been looking for that, and I just ordered that last week. It just seemed like an endless process, and it got overwhelming quick, and we were getting really close to that move date. So we embraced so much of the help that was offered to us by our friends. I mean, we had friends that came over to literally pack with us. I had friends taking my kids for days at a time so that I could pack without distraction, because I have a 1-year-old. When I pack, he's like, nope, we're just going to stay. Like, you put that in, I'm going to take it right out. I had friends bringing us dinner so that it was just one less thing that I had to worry about that day so that I could focus on packing. It was unbelievable. I mean, to look at the difference of the process with friends and without friends, I couldn't compare it. It was such a difference. It made such a daunting task so much more successful and so much more enjoyable. And just like friendships made all the difference in our journey of packing, friendships can make all the difference in our journeys of motherhood. Because we know that motherhood is such a joy. It's such a joy. Look at these sweet babies. But we also know that motherhood comes with a lot of difficulty. And I do think that there is a resource available to us that sometimes we neglect to use as much as we should, and that is friendships. And so by the end of this message, we're going to have a better idea as to how to involve friendships more in motherhood so that we can be more successful moms. Because if we don't make friendships an intimate part of our motherhood, we deprive ourselves of all the benefits that come with them. So there is so much benefit to learning about the ancient wisdom literature that is found in the Bible. I mean, this is wisdom that has gone on for thousands and thousands of years. And all this truth that we find in Scripture still rings true today. And so I want to turn with you to a passage that is found in the book of the Bible, Ecclesiastes. It is a book of wisdom that was written by God through the king of Israel 3,000 years ago. So you can either follow along on the top of your page, or it is also going to be up here on the screen. But let's go ahead and read this out loud together. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. So there is more success when 2 do something together than 1 does alone. I mean, this verse 9 is essentially the whole moral of the passage. And then the author proceeds to say that why? Because there's a good reward for their toil. And then he proceeds in the following verses to give us 3 examples through illustration as to how they benefit us, how 2 are better than 1. So let's look back at verse 10. It proceeds to say, "For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone?" Verse 12, "And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken." What an amazing text this is. And now, again, I mentioned the whole moral of verse 9 is to tell us 2 are better than one. Companionship is better than solitude. Why? Because they have a good reward for their toil. We are more successful when we do things together. And then our first illustration, our first example of this is found in verse 10. "For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up." So he's not referring to someone like physically falling and tripping. I trip over Cheerios and Hot Wheels all the time, but that's not what he's getting at here. He's talking about people encouraging us, people lifting us up and supporting us through these difficult times, and how there is such great benefit of doing that together versus trying to conquer that alone. We know as moms that we are bound to go through difficult times. That is inevitable, and we're going to experience these in different forms. So we must realize that we have help available to us in order to get through these difficult times. And so that is how I want us to put down our first point, is realize that friends are a help in life. Realize that friends are a help in life. I mean, how many of you have had a sick child, or maybe some of you have experienced being sick before with children? It's hard. It's really hard. I mean, even if you just have one baby, it can be really hard. They're clingy. It gets hard to get things done. If you have more children, how do you keep the other children, occupied? It can just feel very overwhelming to have a sick child. Or if you don't feel good, your job doesn't stop. Right? There's all these funny memes on Facebook about when moms get sick, like they don't get to sleep in. Like, no, we got to get to work. We don't have, but we do have help. I was going to say we don't have help. We do have help, and that is our friends. That is the point. When your friends are involved, when you're sick, they go to the store for you. They get groceries for you. They bring you meals. They bring you soup. If you're on your last dose of baby Tylenol, they make a Target run for you. They are such practical help for us in our lives. We're moms. We get tired. How many of you are a little tired right now? You feel a little exhausted. I see some hands going up. Sometimes you just feel like you get to a point where you've hit a wall. And the exhaustion, you're like, I just don't know how I'm going to make it through the day. And you just feel like you're at your wit's end and you need some help and you need some encouragement. And I can't tell you those days where I've just felt tired, things have been extra busy, and all of a sudden a friend will show up with a cup of coffee just to encourage me and give me some caffeine to help me throughout the day. Or better yet, sometimes when I'm tired, friends will come, they will take my kids so that I can rest, or they'll sit with me and we'll laugh because I'm delirious and I'm tired, and that's fun and that's funny. Or what about some of the more difficulty things that surface in motherhood, like insecurities? Or sometimes we can just be discouraged, right? I mean, we all have younger kids here. They're going through developmental things, and we're constantly correcting and directing them, and we just need encouragement. We just need that pat on the back saying, keep going. Keep doing the tasks and the work that the Lord has put you responsible of, and be encouraged by it. What a gift to be able to help our friends. They are such a help to us in our life. And I can't think of one mom or one person, nonetheless, who doesn't need encouragement and support. So if we feel like we don't need friends, what person doesn't need the encouragement and support from another? Now, I would like to think that since you're all here at NAVMO, you see the benefit of being in a community of other moms. You see the value of doing this together rather than trying to do it alone, right? You see the benefits that come with having other moms relate to you. You see the advantages. But how many things in life do we know are good for us? Do we know have great benefit, but yet we kind of neglect them anyway? We just feel like, life's busy right now. In another season, I'll take friendships a little bit more seriously. I'll invest in them a little bit more when I have more time. Well, this kind of makes me think about the dentist. I don't know how many of you like the dentist, but I don't think a lot of people going to the dentist. And no offense to any of you who might be dental hygienists or husbands are, but they're great. We need them. They're benefit. They're valuable, but we don't really like going because they feel burdensome, right? We have so much already on our calendars, and then you tack on another appointment. It just feels kind of stressful. And if it's anything like it is for you, for me, then they feel inconvenient. They always land on a week where I'm just packed with things to do, and I have to find somewhere to take my child. And they just feel a little bit like really? Well, do you ever feel this way about friendships? I mean, do sometimes we just feel like I wear so many hats, I just can't add another one to my plate. I'm stressed out to begin with. I don't have time to meet with friends. I don't have time to open up to them. It just kind of feels like a burden in this season of life, and I just want to push it off. I know it's good for me. I know it's valuable, but I just don't think it's for this season of life. But although you might have an opinion about the dentist, some of us respond to it differently, don't we? I mean, some of us are reluctant to go, and we're responsible. We go, I think, what do they recommend? Like every 6 months we should go to the dentist? I wouldn't know because I'm not one of them. And then you've got people that just go when they can. You know, they go when they can, and it's when it's convenient on their calendar, and, you know, when something's opened up, because when your mouth feels okay, like you don't feel the sense of urgency to go. So there's two groups of people. And so I worry that is the same way we feel about friendships. But if we think friendships are burdensome and stressful and inconvenient, we've got to stop and we've got to speak truth about what friendships really should feel like. I mean, friendships should not feel like a burden. Those type of friendships, the good friendships, should not feel like a burden, but they should be the ones that help carry our burdens. And friendships should most definitely not feel like an added stress, but they should be the help that helps us stress less. And we know that friendships should definitely not feel inconvenient, even in a busy season of life, but they should be the ones who do things even when it's not convenient. Friendships are such a help. And maybe you feel this way a little bit. You know, you're overwhelmed and we're in a busy season raising young children, and so you default to things like, you know, Facebook or Instagram influencers. Those are kind of your friends, you know. You kind of feel like you get to know them a lot because they share so much about their life, and they're pretty vulnerable about the pictures they show, and you start to really feel like you get to know these people that are, I think they call them influencers, or maybe they're just very open. But while you might get some tips from them and learn a little bit about them, they're not going to be there to bring you and your kids soup when they're sick. Like, they might be in the trenches with you as far as being in the same season of life, but they're not with you side by side on the day-to-day where they're able to practically help you in a way that a friend would, that you know that's sitting next to you at the table. And I know that we see friendships as beneficial because I know that none of you would raise your hand and say friendships don't matter for our kids. We want our kids to have good friends. I mean, we see the value even at infancy stage that it's good for them to have that exposure, right? It's good for them to be around other kids. As toddlers, they learn from each other. They learn what not to do from each other. They're on the same page. They like similar things. But we especially see the value of friendships for our kids as they grow older and life becomes a little bit more difficult and complicated, and circumstances arise where they need encouragement and support. And so we know that there's not necessarily a time when our kids will ever need friends less, but there's most definitely a time when they're going to need friends more. Because I don't care how much you don't like going to the dentist, when you're in pain, when you're suffering, when you have a toothache or your tooth chips, you're going to the dentist. And as moms, we inevitably will face difficulties, and so we need friendships as moms in every stage. Whether things are going really well or we're in the middle of a crisis, we need to see the importance of instilling friendships as a part of our motherhood. But it's these type of friends that are most helpful. These are cultivated when we are vulnerable with one another, when we really open up and are honest about areas we struggle or questions we have or areas we think we need help. And so our passage goes on in verse 11 to talk a little bit about this. So let's look back at our passage and read together verse 11. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Again, if two lie together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? So here the author isn't talking about physically lying down together, but rather that we really need to understand what he's saying is the comfort that comes from the empathy and having someone with you during a difficult time. Someone being in the company of you, it brings you warmth, right? As a mom, when you have friends in the trenches with you, that is comforting. That brings you the warmth that he is referring to here. And this takes intentionality. I mean, even if you have good friends, it takes a lot of work to do this. It takes work to open up and to trust people. Because depending on our personalities, we might be a little bit more shy and closed off. You know, we might just be kind of the ones that sit back and listen. That might be something we cater more towards is listening. Or depending on our experiences, we have a hard time opening up because we have a hard time trusting. But if we know that in order to cultivate these friendships that are helpful, that we have to be open and honest and trust, then we need to make sure we resolve to work hard at it. And so let's write it down this way for point number 2, work at openness and trust. Work at openness and trust. So some of you might be timid to open up, like I mentioned, because of trust issues. Maybe you've been hurt before. I could imagine if I posed the question, how many of you have been disappointed or had your trust broken? We might all raise our hand. But I don't think if your son or daughter came home from school and was having a bad experience with a friend that you would discourage them from making more or new friends. No, you wouldn't do that because you see the value in them having friendships, even at the cost of them getting hurt again. You would encourage them to keep looking for good friends. Because despite how uncomfortable it is to go to the dentist, I mean, think about it. Like you're sitting in a chair, which sometimes you're like, I'm going to fall asleep. This is where I'm sleep deprived. I want to take a nap. But they're like, open your mouth. Let me drill in it. And they're like scraping the plaque off your teeth. And they're getting in between. And sometimes your gums bleed. Sorry, this is probably too much. But like they're really getting in there, right? It can be uncomfortable. And it can almost be painful at times. But the good thing about dentists, the great thing about going to the dentist is they can get in places that I cannot on my own. They can see things that I couldn't see without those tools that they have. That's the great thing about dentists is they are equipped to help us in areas that I would not be able to do on my own. And so it is with friendships. If we choose to isolate ourselves, we gyp ourselves from all the benefits that having a good, trusted friend can do for us, all the ways they can invest in us, pray for us, pour into us. And these are things that we cannot do without their help. So we cannot isolate ourselves. When we invite people to be close in our lives, we get an opportunity to embark on whatever it is that the Lord puts in front of us together rather than alone. And what a gift that is. Now, I cannot help but think about this room in particular, this program in particular, when I think about what an awesome and perfect opportunity it is to open up and to trust the people around you. I mean, think about it. Almost every single person in this room is a mom. They can relate to you. They're either in the exact same season of life, they just exited it, or they've been through it before. That is amazing. You get to come here, have a full spread of food. That is awesome. You get to have your kids well cared for. I mean, there's so many benefits to NAVMO. But then you get to learn about a topic, and you get to sit down, and you get to talk about it. And you get to be open and honest if you allow yourself to. And I know you're thinking, well, yeah, Chelsea, like you're behind the podium. Of course you're an advocate of NAVMO. Not that you sound like that, but... But I was once an attendee too, and God gave me a soft heart to be really open and really honest, and I assure you, some of my best friends to this day are the people that I met here, who are in the trenches with me, who are serving me and helping me in all the ways that I've been mentioning. NAVMO has changed my life, and I'm hoping that you see that it can do the same for you. And I mean that. It is such a gift and privilege to be here. So I hope that this encourages you really to open up. And if you're worried about being the person who's just like super annoying, like always asking questions, they'll let you know if you're being annoying. Or if you feel like you've got some dumb questions, I assure you someone else is thinking it too. They're just too nervous to ask it. And that was totally me. And there was a time I remember where I was that annoying person asking a lot of questions, and I was that insecure person being like, they're going to think I'm dumb. But then I had someone come up to me after and say, hey, I just want to thank you for asking that, because I was also thinking it. I was just a little bit too scared to ask it. And so don't think you're dumb. Be bold and ask the question, because it's going to help someone else. And I think sometimes too we're ashamed to admit maybe some areas that we're struggling. We're a little bit embarrassed, but I can guarantee you we all are in some way, shape, or form. But the gift of being here is that we get to battle those together. So NAVMO is such a gift. I obviously cannot emphasize that enough, and I am grateful that I have a microphone to project that. But what's super incredible too is that relationships aren't just something that's evolved over time. God, the creator of the entire world, God, the one who made you, he made us to be relational beings. They mention it in the prayer. He made us to be in fellowship with one another. And a verse that might be familiar to you, Genesis 2:18 says, "Then the Lord God said, 'It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him.'" God created us to be in a relationship, and knowing that should certainly emphasize the importance of it to us. But there might be certain seasons of life, whether you're sick or things are just really busy, or maybe you're out of town, whatever the case might be, we'll call this like forced isolation. We feel like we can't just be around our friends, like our schedules just aren't allowing it, or whatever the case might be. There are still resources available to us to help us stay connected. One of them that I can suggest that's worked for me personally is the app Marco Polo. It's a platform, and it's kind of like leaving a recorded voicemail with your face, or a recorded FaceTime. You can connect with your friends, let them know how things are going, just peek in to encourage them and say hi, and get back to them on your own timing. That's so helpful for a friend. That's been such a practical help for me in the busier seasons of life when I really need to get some prayer and I want to connect with a friend, but maybe I don't have as much time to meet like this or go to park dates. So utilize sources like that. Or I can't tell you how far it will go just to have a quick time of prayer over the phone with a friend, or just to connect real quick and let them know where you're at so that they know how to help you. Put on a short show for your kids, or find a game for them to play. Those 10 minutes or 5 minutes on the phone with a friend could change the whole day for you. So I encourage you that even when you feel like you're kind of forced in isolation, push yourself to stay connected. Now, I promise that I'm not making a commission from the dentist, because I think by the time we leave here, we're all going to be like running to make our appointments, which, funny enough, I received a text on Tuesday that said, "Chelsea Allen, your son Bryce is due for a dentist appointment." And I'm really thankful that they didn't say like for the last 2 years, like they just tell me like you're due, and it's like you see the reoccurring text and you're like, okay, I should probably call. But you know what? The dentist, they don't just reactively help clean our teeth. They also proactively help us prevent bigger issues from surfacing, right? They don't just clean our teeth to get the plaque out of there. They help us and they encourage us to floss so that we avoid, gingivitis and gum disease, right? It's these bigger issues that they help prevent us from. And that's what we can do for our friends too. We're not only reactively helping them in times of crisis, but we can also proactively help them to avoid just the inevitable battles that might surface in motherhood. So I want to look back at our last verse in our passage, which is verse 12. Follow along with me. It says, "And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken." So this is talking about protection and defense, that two can withstand more than one can alone, right? If you're walking in an alleyway and you're with a friend, you're going to be much more capable of fighting the attacker than if you're alone. I don't know how many of you are getting attacked in an alleyway, but I definitely think there are certain moments and instances in motherhood where we're feeling attacked. right? We feel like whether it be in the form of just loneliness or anxiety, maybe we feel like just motherhood is attacking our marriages, whatever the case might be, we have things that we're combating and we need to do that with. And 3 is even better than 2. So let's make sure that we're not just being those consumer friends where we're the recipients of all the help that our friends are giving us, but that we're proactively looking for ways to love and serve our friends to help prevent them from these battles that might occur in friendships. So let's put point 3 down this way. Protect each other in the battles of motherhood. Protect each other in the battles of motherhood. Now, of course, there are going to be things that surface that might just be, completely out of our control that we can't prevent, like illness and accidents and so many other things. But I do think some of just the most day-to-day and common things that we battle are things that we can help our friends with. I think one of the great ways to get to a point where you know specifically how to help friends is to ask them questions. And this isn't with the motive to probe and to be, nosy or to gossip or to get in their business. This is for the pure intention of what's going on? How can I pray for you? How can I help you? In what ways can I serve you? Ask questions like, what is God teaching you in this season of life? I mean, if someone asks you that, that's a pretty deep question that you might open up about something if they hadn't asked you it, right? Or, what parts of motherhood weren't you expecting to be this hard? Maybe there is something that you're combating that hasn't come up in conversation, but by asking that question in a loving way, they might open up and say, you know what? I didn't know it was going to be this hard to balance, home life and motherhood or cooking, whatever it is. And then you can look for a way to proactively help them in that. Or have you been able to make date nights a priority with your husband? I know that sounds super nosy and you're like, don't get in my business. No, you're not asking because you're in your business. You're asking because you want to see if you can maybe help them incorporate date nights, right? We don't all have the funds or the feasibility to get babysitters, or maybe we don't have family in town, but we can swap. We can help each other. Maybe every other week or once a month, you and your friends switch and watch each other's kids so that you can make sure that you're keeping your marriage a priority, right? Because it gets harder and harder as you have kids, but we know that our husbands are our number one priority. We talked earlier about just getting tired and burnt out. We can do things to help prevent that. We can run errands for our friends. You're going to the grocery store or you're doing an Instacart order anyway. Ask your friend if you can take that off their plate. And just the encouragement that comes from the offer goes a really long way, right? And I think sometimes we do feel lonely. We spend a lot of time with our kids, or maybe some of us work and then we go home with our kids and we feel like, man, I wish I could be at the park with them too. Let them know you're thinking about them. And sometimes even just the invite, even if they can't go, it goes a long way too. And I think we also feel those temptations to question what we're doing as moms. But when we have friends who are proactively showing us, encouragement by cards of encouragement, a text saying, hey, I really admire the way you do this. Or sometimes you just need that encouragement that keeps you from getting to a place where you're just feeling really down, And so friendships can do that for us. They can proactively look for ways to encourage us so that we don't get to a deeper place in a battle that doesn't need to be there if they could help us. What a privilege it is, ladies, for us to be just this type of friend, right? To be around people who can help us in this type of way, and for us to be able to serve and love our friends. It is so sacrificial, and it is such an amazing way to love on our friends. So earlier I mentioned to you that we just moved, and we are slowly getting settled in. It was 2 weeks ago today, I think I mentioned, that we just moved. So it's been busy, and we're loving our space, but there's been a particular part of our house that we just haven't been able to really get to. And that's the garage. And unfortunately, it's the garage because we want to meet our neighbors, and we're meeting our neighbors. So when the garage door is open, I'm like, oh, I don't know what they're going to think. It's messy. They're probably wondering why we have so many toy cars. You only have 3 kids. You just kind of get in your head about what are they going to think. And so it just keeps me tempted to keep that garage door closed. But I know that if I were to just open it up and allow my friends to come over, or maybe even my neighbors to come over and help me in the process of getting my garage organized, I'd be so much more successful at it. And I mean, can I step back and look at the garage and think like, yeah, like I could probably clean that on my own. I mean, maybe I could, but there's probably going to be boxes that I can't lift up on my own. There's probably going to be certain toys that I'm not sure where I should put, but if I have a friend come over, they're going to help me organize it better. There's going to be friends that are able to help me see things that I wouldn't see without them. And that is the same with our motherhood and our friendships. If we incorporate friendships as a big part of our lives as motherhood, we are going to see so much more success come from it, and we're going to enjoy it all that much more. And so we know that friendships are a gift from God, and so is motherhood. It's such a gift. So let's work extra hard to make sure that we make friendships a part of motherhood and be encouraged by the successes that we see from it. And so I hope that today you feel a little bit more push to open up and to trust those around you, and I hope that springs into some good, fruitful conversations. Thank you, ladies.